Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebekah Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom.
In our top story, it was a week of political ups and downs. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made his long-anticipated trip to the United States. Netanyahu arrived in the wake of President Joe Biden's announcement that he does not plan to run for re-election in November. Netanyahu thanked Biden for more than 40 years of friendship and praised his distinguished career in public service as senator, vice president, and president of the United States. The two discussed the critical goals ahead in the coming months, the release of all Israeli hostages, defeating Hamas, the importance of confronting the terror axis of Iran, and ensuring that Israel's citizens can return safely to their homes in the north and south of the country. The Israeli premier stressed the importance of meeting Vice President Kamala Harris, the likely Democratic nominee for president. Another highlight of his visit to Washington was addressing a joint session of Congress, his fourth time to do so and a record for a foreign leader. He assured lawmakers on both sides of the aisle that regardless of who the American people choose as their next president, Israel remains its most indispensable and strongest ally in the Middle East. Netanyahu ended the week by holding talks with former President Donald Trump at his Florida compound.
Israeli leaders across the political spectrum were quick to offer words of praise to President Biden following his announcement that he would not seek another term in the White House. President Isaac Herzog thanked Biden for his friendship and steadfast support for the Israeli people over his decades-long career. Herzog described Biden as a true ally of the Jewish people. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant thanked Biden for his unwavering support for Israel over the years and for backing the Jewish state during the war with Hamas in Gaza.
The 2024 Summer Olympics opened in Paris this weekend. The international sporting event has been overshadowed by numerous death threats against the Israeli athletes. A record number of agents with the Shin Bet security service accompanied the team, making it the most secure delegation in France. The Paris 2024 organizing committee also took unprecedented steps to maintain order. 30,000 police have been reinforced with 20,000 soldiers. In addition to 20,000 private security agents have been deployed at Olympic sites and spectator zones. The Israeli delegation received strict security guidelines regarding their participation in the Paris Olympics. They have been instructed not to stay more than 48 hours in the Olympic Village after their competition and to return immediately to Israel due to the high security risks. Some of the threats vowed to repeat the events of the 1972 Munich Games, where the Palestinian Black September terrorist group kidnapped 11 Israeli athletes before slaughtering them.
The Israeli Knesset has approved 3 bills aimed at shutting down the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. All 3 measures were passed by an overwhelming majority. The first would ban the organization from operating on Israeli territory. The second would strip UNRWA personnel of legal immunities and privileges afforded to United Nations staff in Israel. And the third would declare UNRWA as a terrorist organization and require Israel to sever ties with it. Yisrael Beiteinu MK Yulia Malinovsky said not a day goes by that the IDF spokesperson does not publish new findings that link UNRWA to terrorism. New Hope lawmaker Sharon Haskell labeled UNRWA as a cornerstone of the conflict. The 3 bills must still pass second and third readings before becoming law.
Not everyone supports a hostage deal at any price. Senior religious Zionist rabbis have spoken out against a hostage deal currently under negotiations with the Hamas terrorist organization. Rabbi Yaakov Ariel, Rabbi Dov Lior, and Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu and others admit that it is a commandment to save hostages and return them to their families, but it should not be done at the cost of endangering the lives of all the citizens of Israel. The rabbis said the public cannot endure the release of dangerous monsters that will allow Hamas to rebuild its collapsing army and the withdrawal from strategic areas and the cessation of fighting before the defeat of Hamas. They concluded their letter with a prayer and wished Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu success in his mission to return the hostages home.
Israeli forces thwarted a kidnapping plot by a Hamas terror cell from a refugee camp near Jericho. The Shin Bet Security Service, working with the IDF and police, discovered the terrorist had dug a pit to hide the hostages. The entrance was camouflaged near the home of one of the cell members. The suspects also admitted they acquired weapons and planned to carry out shooting and bombing attacks. Authorities seized a submachine gun, an explosive device, a bulletproof vest, communications equipment, and military uniforms.
Member of Knesset Dan Iluz wants the world to know that the creation of a Palestinian state is a dangerous idea. Following the Hamas genocidal attacks on Israel, many in the international community renewed calls for a two-state solution. The Likud MK emphasized that granting statehood to Palestinians would reward terrorism and send a message that violence pays off. He said it is not only a bad idea, it is a dangerous one. Iluz stressed that a Palestinian state would be a disaster, not just for Israel, but for the whole free world. It would embolden terrorists around the globe. The Canadian-born Knesset member said, instead of showing weakness, we must show strength. Instead of giving a prize to terror, we should make them pay a price.
Actions by the Israeli Defense Forces have disrupted terrorist financing. The IDF recently neutralized terrorist moneyman Tassin al-Andis. He was a key funder of Gaza-based terrorist groups. His death follows that of Syrian businessman Baraka Katerji. He had ties to Hezbollah and ISIS. He was also close to the regime of brutal Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. Katarji was killed when his car was targeted west of Damascus as he traveled on a highway linking Syria to Lebanon. The Saudi news outlet Al-Hadath reported that Israel has changed its tactics and has started to eliminate funders of Hezbollah and Hamas, even in Iran and Yemen.
The Palestinian Authority wants Israel's High Court of Justice to annul 2 laws attacking the PA's pay-to-slay policy. The victims of the Hostile Actions Compensation Law and the Terror Victims Compensation Law were passed by the Knesset in March. They permit families to claim up to 10 million shekels per murder victim and 5 million shekels per terror victim from entities funding terrorism. The Palestinian Authority claims the laws are illegal and infringe on its economic sovereignty and will lead to the PA's financial collapse. Nearly 300 bereaved Israeli families have requested to join as respondents to the petition. The pay-to-slay program rewards terrorists and their families for attacking Jews. The Supreme Court will hear the petition on August 4th.
Turning now to archaeological news, and hardly a day goes by that the Bible is not being brought to life by new findings in Israel. A newly discovered massive trench has been uncovered. It separated the city of David from the upper sections of the Temple Mount. The moat measures 9 meters deep and 30 meters wide and was intended to protect the city from the north. The excavations were conducted by the Israel Antiquities Authority and Tel Aviv University. Officials believe the moat could date back to the Middle Bronze Age, about 3,800 years ago. Archaeologists said evidence suggests it was used during the centuries when Jerusalem was the capital of the Kingdom of Judah, beginning with King Josiah. The find reveals that during the time of the First Temple, the period in which the books of the Bible were compiled, the city was divided into at least 2 distinct parts. Eli Esquisito, the director of the IAA, said once again discoveries are being revealed that shed new and vivid light on biblical literature.
Japan has taken a page from U.S. President Joe Biden's handbook on how to deal with Israel. Tokyo has decided to impose asset-free sanctions on 4 Israeli residents of Judea and Samaria. Japan's chief cabinet secretary alleges that violent acts against Arabs by some Israelis have increased following the brutal massacre of Jewish men, women, and children by Hamas on October 7th. He said Japan continues to urge the Israeli government to halt settlement activities in the biblical heartland of Israel. Japan joins Britain and Canada in following the lead of the Biden administration to single out only Jewish residents of Judea and Samaria for sanctioning. Despite this move, Japan remains somewhat friendly towards Israel. The government in Tokyo does not recognize a Palestinian state and has supported Israel's right to defend itself following the barbaric attack by Hamas on October 7th. Japan also staunchly opposes Iran's rogue nuclear program that threatens not only Israel, but the entire world.
That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Tali Shalem. She is the founder and president of HolyGems. Tali, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you.
So tell our viewers a little about what is HolyGems.
HolyGems is a jewelry brand that its features are the jewelry, fine jewelry, inlaid with precious gems mined from the Holy Land.
It's very interesting because you don't think of precious gems being mined in the Holy Land. You know, a lot of time you think of Africa or a place like that. Where were you able to find these precious gems?
In 1988, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, one of the most influential Jewish leaders of our generation, said that he had a meeting with the mayor of Haifa, and he said that near Haifa there are precious gems deposits in the land. Nobody actually did anything with this mention of existence of such treasures, and my father was a diamond dealer and a jeweler and a great follower of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he heard these words and he said, okay, well, if the Rebbe said it, it's probably true. And he went on a journey that nobody thought possible, against all odds, and he found those gems. The first ever precious gem deposit, economic deposit in the land of Israel.
Well, this is very biblical because in the Bible it actually mentions that there are gems in Israel. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it says in Isaiah that I will lay your foundations with sapphires and all your borders with precious stones. It was mentioned in the Bible that there are supposed to be some kind of gems in Israel, but nobody ever tried looking for them. So this was the first ever in history. It took 20 years, based only on faith, actually, against all geological opinions and skepticism that was at the time. But my father did it. He found those gems and he found the deposit. Unfortunately, in 2019, he passed away. So just when we got the approval from the government and we got the license and everything, but we are manifesting his dreams.
That's amazing. So what kind of gems are you finding there? What are the gems that you have found?
We have sapphire, which is a known a precious gem. Everybody knows sapphire, the blue sapphire usually. In Israel, you have blue sapphires, you have green sapphires, which is amazing in itself because the green is like olive tree green. So, you could say that God is the marketer of all marketers, but it's olive green. And there are also garnets, which are red garnets, and black spinels. And we also have the caramel sapphire, which is a very unique, rare, unbelievable stone, which is actually a sapphire, but it has inclusions inside that makes it look like the sky. And the geologists when we found this gem for the first time, we didn't know what it was. And we gave it to experts. And they said that this gem is, they see it for the first time. It's like it was never found anywhere else in the world. And so it's very unique to Israel. And one more thing that they said was that the conditions that had to be in the depth of the earth for these gems to form doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So this gem, the existence of this gem actually means that this land is special, you know. This land is special, biblically and spiritually, but it's also special naturally. Naturally, you have proof.
You know, it's interesting because this story has been told so many times in different ways. Archaeologists who follow the Bible to find things. You know, your story about finding the gems because it's in the Bible. Why aren't more people just opening their Bible and understanding that everything that says in there is not a metaphor, it's actually fact? Where's the misconception?
I think this is the question of the century, you know, in regard to every aspect of our life.
Absolutely. So the question is, what are you doing with the gems now?
It's sold only under HolyGems and only in our HolyGems store or certified stores. We had a store in Jerusalem, but since the war started, we had to close it. But we opened another store in New York, and next to the Lubavitcher Rebbe's synagogue, and 770 it's called. And we have plans to open a lot of other stores. This is our working plan. There's a lot of demand to these gems. We have an online store, of course. And
Tali, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
You know, I wanted to tell you about the existence of these gems. It's something that not everybody knows, and we're trying to tell the world about these remarkable gems that we found. And I can tell you from personal experience and from reactions that we get that this is something that doesn't compare to any other jewel that you'll ever wear or find. Yes.
Thank you, Tali, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
And now the truth from Zion.
The Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, better known as BDS, is an anti-Semitic call to refrain from doing business with Israel. This anti-Semitic weapon has been making waves for years, whether it means not buying Israeli products or even refraining from engaging in conversation with Israel supporters. BDS proponents have fooled many into thinking they are legitimately advancing the status of Palestinians by not supporting Israel's economy. But this could not be further from the truth. BDS can be traced back to the infamous Durban Conference hosted by South Africa in 2001. Contrary to its purported goal of advocating against racism and discrimination, the conference actually produced the BDS movement, which embodies the exact opposite. BDS is, in reality, a thinly veiled attempt to destroy Israel and the Jewish people through financial warfare. BDS works with a policy called anti-normalization, which encourages people not to speak with, work with, or interact with Jews or anyone who supports the State of Israel.
The boycott, divestment, and sanction movement is an anti-Semitic initiative designed to attack the one Jewish state in the world. Ironically, its victims are the Palestinians, as it prevents them from getting good jobs in Israel.
When the international community refuses to buy Israeli products or do business with Israelis, the people who suffer the most are the Palestinians, who rely on Israeli employment or even Israeli partnerships for their own economic security. In fact, Palestinian workers earn more than 4 times the salary when employed by Israeli companies versus Palestinian businesses. The European Union has taken a page from BDS advocates, labeling items from Jerusalem, Judea and Samaria, and the Golan Heights as products from, quote, illegal Israeli settlements. The EU does not take this action against any other nation, despite there being a long list of countries with disputed territories. The IHRA's official definition of anti-Semitism explicitly includes targeting Israel with double standards and applying boycotts, divestment, and sanctions against the Jewish state, a manifestation of anti-Semitism disguised as honest activism. BDS has become a contentious issue on college campuses worldwide, with many institutions serving as hotbeds for its advocacy. Colleges and universities, under the claim they are allowing for free speech and activism, often provide platforms for BDS supporters to promote their agenda. Student groups and academic departments frequently organize events, lectures, and protests in support of BDS. They label it as a human rights issue and wrongly compare it to other social justice movements. Some faculty members even incorporate BDS-related topics in their curriculum, making Jewish students uncomfortable and stoking the flames of anti-Semitism in places where students should feel safe. New York's Columbia University is now under immense student pressure to sever ties with Israel's Tel Aviv University, which has a joint program offering students the chance to study half the time in New York and half the time in Israel. Now, both students and staff fear that the wide-scale pro-Palestinian protesters on Columbia's campus are going to affect the program's success and continuation. A new trend in student governments is to pass resolutions urging their universities to divest from companies working with Israel in any capacity. Critics point out that BDS targets Israel disproportionately, ignores the complexities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and employs tactics reminiscent of historical anti-Semitism, such as boycotts and demonization of Jews. 37 U.S. states have taken a stand against BDS. The laws vary in scope and severity, outlawing its discriminatory practices in an effort to protect the interest of both Israelis and Palestinians. Proponents of these laws argue that they are necessary to combat anti-Semitism and protect Israel from discriminatory economic measures. Despite these efforts to combat BDS, the fight against anti-Semitism is far from over. BDS may masquerade as a movement for justice, but its true colors are revealed upon closer inspection. From its origins at the hate-filled Durban Conference to the financial hit on Israeli and Palestinian workers, BDS stands as a testament to the dangers of politicizing trade, business, and economic relations for everyone. Up next, the ICEJ Report from the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem.
ICEJ is passionate about offering practical help and life-changing opportunities to those in need in every sector of Israeli society. Since Israel's war with Hamas began, Israeli citizens have been negatively impacted economically, with many business owners losing more than 50% of their monthly income. This makes it difficult to keep their business afloat and to provide for their families. Government compensation offers insufficient relief for small businesses, many that are operated by women. The situation is even more complicated for those evacuated from their homes, far away from their customer base. To help alleviate these challenges, the ICEJ is sponsoring business mentorship and giving grants to help small businesses succeed, even in these challenging times.
Since 1980, the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem has been a voice of Christian support for Israel and connected the global church to the land of the Bible. Headquartered in Jerusalem, the ICEJ has taken action to stand with Israel by caring for Holocaust survivors, helping Jewish families return home to Israel, providing bomb shelters, fighting anti-Semitism around the world, and by inviting Christians to discover Israel for themselves.
נעים מאוד, קוראים לי רוחמה לקיה. עשיתי קורס עיצוב גבות ואיפור קבוע, שיטת השערה. למדתי ומשם התגלגלתי. יש לי המון אתגרים בעסק בעקבות ה7 לאוקטובר. אשקלון מדורגת כמקום ראשון שחוטפת את כל הרקטות. אנחנו כאן בדרום חיים את העניין של הרקטות, זה לא חדש לנו. כמובן שבתקופת המלחמה זה מגיע לשיאים, אבל אנשים שהם מהמרכז, מראשון, תל אביב, אנשים מאשקלון ברחו מפה, היה מחסומים בכניסה וביציאה. אשקלון הייתה מדורגת בווייז כמקום הכי מסוכן בארץ. אנשים מאשקלון, אני עזבתי את אשקלון. ואחרי תקופה די ארוכה, של כמה חודשים טובים, חזרנו לאשקלון, הכל נרגע, המקום נקי, אין מחבלים. אין עבודה. זאת אומרת, מלא עסקים נסגרו, אין לי עבודה בכלל. החודש הזה יש לי רק 2 לקוחות. את התוכנית הבראה, ראיתי אותה שהייתי מפונה באילת. אנחנו הרי התפנינו מפה, מאשקלון. וראיתי תוכנית הבראה וישר נרשמתי. היו לי 2 אופציות. והלכתי על האופציה הראשונה שמלכתחילה כבר רציתי אותה, שזה בעצם קידום ממומן, שיווק. להתחיל לשווק, יש לי תקווה, יש לי רצון, יש לי מוטיבציה. אני יודעת לעמוד מול אתגרים. אני מאוד מקווה שאת יודעת, אני אצליח ככה להתעלות על זה, ולהתחיל לשווק עוד הפעם מחדש. לצערי הרב, אני נאלצת לעזוב את המקום הזה. זהו, אין לי מה לשלם סתם על משהו שבעצם לא מכניס לי. אז קשה לי ככה להגיד לך מה יהיה איתי, אבל אני מאוד מקווה שבאמצעות התוכנית הזאת אני אוכל לעשות קידום, ובעצם לקבוע עם לקוחות אולי בעוד חודש, חודש וחצי. כיף לשמוע שיש אנשים שהם לא יהודים, שרוצים לעזור ליהודים, אז אני ממש מודה להם. ובגלל זה גם היה לי חשוב לבוא ולהגיד את הדברים, שישמעו כמה באמת אנחנו מתמודדים עם קשיים, וכמה חשוב שגם הם נמצאים, ובאמת תומכים בנו בימים האלה.
After Hamas brutally attacked Israel on October the 7th, 2023, the ICEJ has been actively standing with Israel and her people through advocacy and urgently needed aid projects. Now is the time for Christians to turn their love for Israel and the Jewish people into real action as never before. Your donation will help deliver bomb shelters to at-risk areas, provide necessary supplies for first responders, support affected citizens with trauma care, and will eventually help rebuild these devastated communities. Visit ICEJUSA.tv to donate online, or call 1-800-910-6355 and give your generous gift today.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebekah Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elrom, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.